I saw my human being ignored at her own family dinner. So I climbed onto her lap, and it was as if time stopped. My name is Max. I'm a Chihuahua. Tiny, loyal, adorable, and more observant than anyone else. I'm not much of a barker, but I see everything. And when I see sadness, my heart beats faster. Because my human sadness, it's like rain falling inside her soul. I remember that day as if I were still lying on the rug, watching everything from under the table. Voices were loud, laughter filled the room, silverware clinked against plates. But my human? She was there, sitting at the very end, wearing that blue dress she loves. And no one seemed to notice. Not a single plate was passed to her. Not one, "Are you okay?" Nothing. Just the sound of glasses being raised to toast the youngest son's success. A success she helped build, even if no one remembered. In that moment, I knew what I had to do. And it wasn't out of anger. It was out of love. I climbed onto her lap with my tiny paws, curled up, looked deep into her eyes, and the room, once so noisy, fell silent. Everyone stopped, everyone looked, and no one dared say a word. But hold on, before I tell you how we got to that moment, when my simple gesture made the world see my human's greatness, let me tell you how it all began. Because my human story, it's made of small silences, the kind that scream. And me, I came to break the loudest one. My human always had a calm gaze, the kind that seems to listen even to the wind. But after she moved to that big, cold house, the one they call hers, but which never smelled of freshly baked cake or echoed with running footsteps, her gaze changed. She spent a lot of time looking out the window. Not the living room window, no. The one in the back room where the sun only peeked in a little at the end of the afternoon. She'd sit there, hands in her lap, fingers moving slowly, as if they were trying to remember the touch of someone who stopped hugging her. Her children came by now and then. They arrived loud, full of gifts that felt more like apologies wrapped in shiny paper. She'd smile, a tiny smile, the kind that only lives on the outside. Inside, I could feel it was just an echo. The daughter-in-law, well, she was always in a hurry. "Just dropping this off, can't stay long, we have an important dinner." And my human, she'd reply with that, "It's okay, dear," which really meant, "I'm just happy to see you." But no one listened. It was on one of those forgotten afternoons that I arrived. They placed me in her lap like someone handing over a package, saying, "Maybe he'll keep you company." And they left before even knowing if she wanted me. But I saw, I felt, she did want me. Not because she needed a little dog, but because she needed someone who would stay, who would look at her like she was still important, like she was still alive inside. At first, she looked carefully at me, as if she was afraid of breaking something in me or in herself. But I'm not made of glass. I'm made of fur, paws, and heart. And every day I got a little closer, slept a little nearer, licked her hand when it hung loose, and when she cried softly in the middle of the night, I'd tuck my nose under her arm and wait. Because sadness doesn't need questions, it just needs presence. That's how I became part of her, and she became part of me. My human and I were two beings who no longer had a place in that house full of empty voices, but we had each other. And for me, that was already a lot. Before I go on to tell you how we turn things around, when my simple gesture made the world see my human's greatness, I want to ask something of you on the other side. If this story has already touched your heart, if you felt that urge to protect someone you love, leave a like and subscribe, because the best is yet to come.
That dinner? It wasn't the only time her family ignored her. There were smiles that didn't reach their eyes, conversations that veered away from her, and small gestures that seemed to say, "You don't belong here." But in the silence of the days that followed, something began to change. My human found a new light, one that didn't need their approval. She started tending to the plants in the backyard, a timid little garden that bloomed slowly. I followed her every step, every leaf she touched with care. She'd laugh softly with the flowers, talk to me like I was an old friend, and I knew that was her revolution: quiet, dignified, beautiful. And me? I was there, in her lap, feeling every step of that change. But this story doesn't end in the backyard. There's a moment, the one I showed you at the start, where everything truly changes. Want to know how a tiny dog like me made an entire family stop and look? Then stay with me, because you'll understand soon. It all started on a golden afternoon when my human decided she no longer needed their silence. She opened the backyard door and called me close, like she always did, but this time there was something different in the way she smiled. She took an old rocking chair and placed it in the garden. I jumped into her lap, feeling the warmth of the sun mixed with the scent of blooming flowers. It was in that moment I realized she had found a hidden piece of happiness. Days later, my human started tending to the garden with a care she'd never shown before. I was her faithful companion. When she watered the plants, I sat by her side. When she plucked dry leaves, I wagged my tail as if to say, "You're doing great." What no one knew was that the simple act of tending to the plants was growing something much bigger inside her, the courage to be happy in her own way. Until the day of the next family gathering arrived. My human was nervous. I felt it in the way she held my paw, but for the first time, she was ready not to hide. We sat at the table together, and when the cold glances started to overlook her, I jumped into her lap, stared at those serious faces, and didn't budge. And then something happened that no one expected. The room fell silent, not because I was big, but because I was my human's presence that they could no longer ignore. She smiled at me, and in that moment, she knew she no longer needed their approval. She was free. After that dinner, everything changed for my human. She was no longer that sad shadow in the corner of the room. She became a woman with a gentle smile, spending her afternoons in the garden surrounded by the flowers she nurtured, and by me, her little guardian. The family? They still came by sometimes, with that rushed, indifferent air. But now, they saw her differently. Not because she sought their approval, but because she no longer needed it. My human gained something far greater, the freedom to be herself, to be happy in her own time and way. I'll always be by her side, small but strong, with a heart full of love that can't be measured by size. And you know what I learned watching all this? That the true value of life isn't in the words we're told, but in the silent love that stays. In the end, I'm not just a tiny dog. I'm her voice when no one else speaks. I'm the hug that never fails, and that no one can take away. Because real love is loyalty, it's presence, it's staying even when everything seems to crumble. And I chose to stay.